Hello, everyone. Hopefully everyone's a little bit still awake after lunch. Today we're going to be talking about a concept all the way through to a certification and the journey that a product takes to get to the PCI product listing. So, brief intro, I'm Zelia Pantani. I am product security focused on the GRC team at Block. We're going to go over a quick introduction just to share with you all kind of why we're here. We're also going to cover what the product journey is, and then we're going to go through some of the key takeaways. So as you see on the screen, Block has kind of gone through this process quite a bit. We've started with our little white reader, which is a little hard to see on the screen today, but famous for being at those local mom and pop coffee shops, for being at your farmers markets, and over time we've gone through and created hardware that is terminal-based, so you can handheld it. We've had register-based products, plenty of other listings as well. So we've done this quite a bit. Hopefully, you can take from some of our learnings and find success as you go through this process yourself. So this is kind of what the process looks like. You have a payment vendor, which is yourself for the sake of today's discussion. We also have the PCI recognized laboratories, and we also have the council. And it's really important that all of three of these partners work very closely to collaborate together in order to get this idea listed on the PCI site. We're going to cover a little bit more in depth each of these phases, but we're going to start first with the payment vendor. So this is us, but it is also a huge collection of your teams within whichever company you're at. This includes legal teams, it includes go-to-market teams, it includes your comms teams, your product teams, your engineering teams, most importantly you as you're the middleman in this process, helping everyone get to where they need to be. As a part of this process, you are going to need to ask and understand a few key things and aspects about what the concept is in order to get it listed on the site. Some of the things that I like to ask are, what is the product? What is it going to do? How is it designed? What's the architecture? And what are some of the milestones that we're actually tracking towards? I've had teams come to me before and say, hey, we've got this software-based product. We are attempting to launch it in 4 weeks. What do we need to do now? And I said, wow, 4 weeks is not that much time. We might need to push that back a little. But that's where we really start to get into the questions of what is this product and how is it working? And slowly but surely we uncovered, okay, it's pretty similar in the architecture to some other products that we have approved as well. That's helpful for us, and that's able to move that process along. So all of these questions, they come up together, and it's useful to, get through and understand what the product is. And obviously, you're going to want to prepare. So again, same thing, had that team come to us a little earlier, we could have been able to maybe do a gap analysis and really just kind of get into what standard applies and where there's any potential gaps that we need to account for. And it's a great way to start engaging with various teams and partners early on. In the hardware lifecycle, obviously things move a little bit slower. There's about usually 3 to 5 years sometimes between the idea stage all the way to the actual certification and the listing stage. So it's really good to be involved very early with your teams. At Block, we've had a team come to us and say, this is the design that we're thinking about for our register product, for example. They came to us very early on, and we were able to work through with them what some of the optimal designs would be to reduce the compliance impact and the burden on them, but as well just to make sure that it was a secure process as well that we were going through and certifying. The next stage of the process is going to be working with your PCI recognized laboratory. So this is going to be very different for each vendor. It's going to be very particular to your business. In the previous slide, I had just mentioned if you go through and do a gap assessment, sometimes you can work with a PCI recognized laboratory to do that gap assessment, and that's very helpful. You're able to understand, where your product has these gaps, and you're able to start prepping to plan for that. But that might also be part of your decision on which lab you're going to work with for certification. They might already have some of the understanding. They might have some of that historical knowledge. You have a working relationship together. And they understand that standard, obviously, that you are certifying against. This is one of the many things you can consider, but there are also some other key asks once you've narrowed down who you're choosing to collaborate with. That's going to be the timing. What is the availability? As we just talked about again, the roadmap planning is very important, and you're there to help your product get certified in the product team's timeline. So we're really going to be cautious to make sure that the assessment can get done on the timing that the product team needs as well. You're also going to want to ask about what the support looks like, both for yourself and for them. You want this to be a successful relationship, a successful product launch and certification journey. So you're going to ask what the bilateral support is. For Block's case, we're obviously a very global company, but we're also a part of a global industry. So the PCI recognized laboratories are all over the world. And I am based in San Francisco, but that does not mean that everybody else is. So we have asked at certain times for local support, such that it's in a closer time zone to us. There's a little bit more overlap, and we're able to really work through any kinks during the project itself a little bit more seamlessly and cohesively together. And it's great to iron that out prior to getting started on the work, so that way you're clear of what the expectations are of one another. Also, you're going to ask about the cost, obviously. This is going to be a strategic business decision based off of you and your product teams. So really working together, again, from the previous slide, having those conversations early on with your product teams is going to be huge and crucial to your success while working with your external teams as well. So the output of this stage really is having those project expectations aligned and really having your scope aligned, right? You're not going to go to a laboratory for a piece of your hardware that can't certify to the hardware standards. You're going to go to the laboratories that can help you with the products that you are trying to bring to the market and to the sellers and to the world. So we have just sped through a ton of months, weeks, and work, and we're now assuming we're at the point where the lab has submitted the evaluation to the council for their review. This is traditionally been a part of the process that vendors don't have a ton of visibility into, but there are changes coming. Luckily, there have been some really great acceptance of the vendor feedback, and we're going to be able to see some of those points of the process through a portal for both the vendors as well as the labs, and the council have a portal already. But the vendors are going to have greater insight into this, which is very helpful. A couple of years ago, I was checking in on one of our software certifications to the PCI software-based pin-on-COTS standard. I know that's a mouthful. Many of you know it as SPOC. And I was emailing with our labs asking, hey, where are we at? Are there questions? Because, again, back to the beginning, the product teams are always wondering as well. Are we on track? Are we meeting our deadlines? Are we going to be able to launch the product when we need? So really important for me to be able to get that communication with the lab and then to be able to also share that with my teams. And luckily now we'll be able to do so. So yeah, just to cover the rest of this process, the council will review, hopefully accept and approve your concept that is now an actual product, and you will get listed on the PCI approved solution site. Congratulations. So, like I said, we've sped through a lot of that work, and it can take months and it can take a lot of time, but there's a lot of different players in that space as well. And a lot of these things I hope that you take with you if you decide to go and certify your own concept, aka product. Some of these things I urge you to take with you, and this is really true of any project that you're going to take part in. Start engaging and start preparing early. Having those gap assessments and having an understanding of where the bumps in the road are going to be way before you actually reach them is going to be critical for everybody's success in this part of the project. You don't want to wait until the last minute, and then you have to go back to your product teams and tell them, sorry, we're not going to be able to launch on time. Granted, things happen. I've had teams come to me and say, we're launching in 6 months. Suddenly, engineering needs more time, and somebody else needs more time, and now we're a year out from our originally planned launch date. So don't worry if it doesn't go to plan exactly, but at least you have planned, and at least you've just started that process way early. The next is developing those project plans. Like we've been speaking about the entire time, the milestones are critical. Having what's necessary for certification, documentation. You're going to go through a series of question and answer where you and the laboratory are trying to get an understanding of exactly how this product operates and how it's going to satisfy the standards requirements. So having that detailed project plan, not only for your external partners, but for your internal teams as well, is able to bring that greater alignment from the get-go. And you're going to be able to get their buy-off and the stakeholder buy-off, and you're going to be able to work together when things come up in the plan that might be a little bit different than what you thought they would be. As we've also said, effectively communicating with any of your partnering teams is super important. External, internal, you need to have that communication. Like I'd mentioned early on, we have very good communication with our internal teams. So we have a hardware team as we develop hardware. And because we have that strong relationship with them, we are able to make this process so much smoother by working together and being clear about what it is that we're both expecting. This was especially helpful, like I mentioned, in that design phase. Working with the engineering teams. When challenges come up and your teams tell you that it's going to take a little bit longer for their launch date, it's great because you're already in the know. You're already communicating with one another so frequently, and it leads for a bunch of success. Also, on that note, is communicating effectively, with the council. And we've had times before where we had a product that we had gotten approved, which is awesome, but the teams weren't ready to launch it. We had to work with the council to develop a new process in order to be able to actually list a product or approve a product prior to the actual listing of it. And so being able to share in that communication really led to everyone having a successful path forward, not only just for Block, but also for the industry. Now there is a process that exists, and that was a direct result of being able to communicate with the council and effectively just getting where we needed to be. And last, I would say, is setting those clear expectations. I think we've covered this very clearly. You need to be very curious about what the product is. You really need to assert when it is you have certain timelines and what it is you need done. But at the end of the day, being able to set those clear expectations, get the stakeholder buy-off, you're going to have a very successful project just by nature of working together and making sure everyone's on the same page. So that was all I had for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Hopefully we're all, again, still awake post-lunch. But I will be around for the rest of the week, and I am also happy to connect on LinkedIn. I do this day in and day out, so I have tons more I can share with you all, and I'm happy to connect later on to do so. Thank you.